I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC 305, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. This was one of the tougher ones I've done before because there's so many interesting performances, so many incredible performances on this card. But to me, the biggest stock riser on this card was Dan Hooker. Now, Dan Hooker was an underdog going into this fight. I know he won a split decision. It was a close fight with Mateusz Gamrot, but being a plus 210 underdog, taking out a guy who a lot of people felt like had done enough to earn a title shot even prior to this fight, that's a very big win here for Dan Hooker. And I give him a slight edge over my next person I'm going to put on this list, just because of the fact that, I mean, we were just a couple fights removed from a lot of people thinking that Dan Hooker was not going to be in the UFC much longer. Remember, he had that stint at featherweight and, lost to Islam, lost to Arnold Allen, and now he's racked off 3 straight wins. His last win being the one win tonight being the most notable. Very, very big win for Dan Hooker. He has now put himself into the title conversation. I still think he needs a fight or two more. I would love to see maybe Justin Gaethje or a Charles Oliveira fight. All those would be good options here for Dan Hooker. He has got to be the biggest stock riser on this card because he went out and got it done. Now, pick number 2. I think this is kind of obvious, or maybe it isn't to you, but Duplessis, Dricus Duplessis is going to be my number 2 pick. I debated putting him number 1 or number 2. There's a very strong argument for him being number 1 as well. He was an underdog going into this fight. I did pick him in this fight, not trying to brag or anything, but I did think he would get it done. I did not think he would submit Israel Adesanya, so that to me was super impressive with the fact that he's the first fighter to submit Israel Adesanya. He's also the first fighter to hand Israel Adesanya back-to-back losses in the UFC. And think about it, Israel Adesanya's had 27 fights in his career. He's never been submitted. Duplessis is the first one to do it. Think about it this way. Duplessis has now finished Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya. Like, that's super impressive. So Duplessis for sure has got to be one of the biggest stock risers on this card. He was the main event. It was a great fight. I think you could have also given this a fight of the night. I know Gamrot and Hooker got fight of the night, but this one certainly deserved it as well. And how about the perseverance too? I mean, Izzy was winning on the feet. He was landing those body shots, and Duplessis was able to persevere, get the takedown, and get the submission win. So Duplessis for sure has to be a stock dropper. And again, my third pick here could have easily been the biggest stock riser on this card as well in Kai Kara France. Who saw this coming? I didn't. I picked Steve Erceg. A lot of people picked Steve Erceg in this fight. You think of what Erceg was able to do in that fight with Pantoja and not win and still come out looking great and getting knocked out in the first round. Kai Kara France, a plus 90 underdog, plus 190 underdog. Super impressive here for Kai. He takes out Steve Erceg. First knockout loss in Steve Erceg's career. I think Kai Kara France might have got himself a title shot. I don't know what's going on with Pantoja. There's some rumors about Kaya Sakura maybe getting the title shot coming over from Rizin. I think France has certainly made a case for him getting a title shot in this spot. So Kai Kara France, like I said, if there's no Duplessis, if there's no Dan Hooker upset, he's probably getting the top pick as biggest stock riser because the title shot could absolutely be next for him. But I had to put him behind just because, again, I think with Hooker, to me, it was more of an underdog. More people, I think, were giving Gamrot a chance in that fight over, say, picking Erceg over France. And I think with DDP, the optics of it being the main event and, again, handing Izzy his second straight loss, that's got to count as well. So, again, these are just 3 picks. Some honorable mentions we got to talk about here as well. How about Carlos Prats, for sure. Super impressive with what he was able to do, taking out Li Jingliang. I think that was the first knockout loss in Li's career, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, first knockout loss in how many fights? He's in how many? 28 fights. Very impressive win there. And he's got 3 wins in a row now. Someone mentioned in my chat tonight him and Kelvin Gastelum. I love that fight. 31 years old, definitely someone to keep an eye on in the welterweight division. He's got to get an honorable mention here for sure. And again, if this card wasn't so good, he could have easily been in the top 3, like I mentioned. 2 others I want to mention on this card as well. There's some good performances. Got to mention Casey O'Neill. Her back was kind of against the wall. Really bad performance in her last fight against Lipsky. I think Lipsky was the last fight, right? Yeah. Big layoff too. Hadn't fought since December. She goes out there. She takes out Luana Santos. Looked good tonight. Switched up camp. She's at fight ready now. Very good win there for Casey O'Neill, who's still only 26 years old. She gets an honorable mention for sure. And how about opening up the card as an underdog? Jesus Aguilar taking out Stuart Nickel, not to be confused with Steve Nickel, who Cormier, I think, called him tonight. Plus 185 underdog, came out here, got it done in enemy territory and got the win. Got to give a shout out to Jesus Aguilar taking out Stuart Nickel as well. Okay, let's talk about the stock droppers. This is another one that, you could go a lot of different ways as far as how you pick this, but I'm looking at this optically. So to me, Israel Adesanya is the biggest stock dropper on this card. Now, the reason he is a couple reasons. Number 1, it's back-to-back losses for him. Number 2, he's 35 years old. Number 3, like, where does he go? Like, I made a case tonight on my post-fight show that it might be better for him to go to 205, not because I think he'll have more success, but it might be easier to get a title shot up there than it would be at 185, because right now he's lost to Strickland and to Duplessis. It's going to be hard for him to work his way back. I would assume one of those guys is still going to end up being champion by, even if Izzy gets 2 wins. So I think the road up is harder. He's got that history with Alex Pereira. If he wins one fight at light heavyweight, I could see the UFC giving him a title shot at 205 because of the fact he's beat Alex Pereira before. And that's a big fight just with the names involved. So I know I'm going a little off the wall here with this, but I just think optically, Adesanya, had he won, there's so many things that could have happened after this. He could have moved up as well and done a double champ thing. I mean, there's so many things that could have happened, but him losing and him getting finished is tough, right? Like, you can't do the rematch with DDP because he got finished in this fight. It was close, obviously, leading up to it. But yeah, Adesanya's got to be the biggest stock dropper. Now, another option you could have said for the number 1 spot, and I would have gladly accepted it as well, but I don't think he gets treated very well anyways by the UFC, and that's Mateusz Gamrot. Now, look, he was a favorite coming in, as was Izzy, by the way. Izzy was a favorite on the betting odds, as I mentioned. This fight was close. If you would have scored this for Gamrot, I wouldn't have had a huge issue. I thought it was very, very, very racer close. The problem is he had, a nice win streak, 3 straight wins. He was the backup for Islam and Charles Oliveira when they were scheduled to fight last year. So obviously, people felt like he was close to getting that title shot. And now him losing, he's got to really work his way back up, because I think there's a school of thought that, Gamrot's not exciting to watch. And I think that's actually something that hurt him tonight, because rather than do his typical fight style, he tried to be a bit more exciting, and he tried to stand and trade with Hooker, and that ended up not working well. When he got hit with that left hand, he really wasn't the same the rest of the fight. So Gamrot's in a tough spot. The reason I put Adesanya ahead of Gamrot, and I know their age is not too far off, like Gamrot's 33, Adesanya's 35, it's the fact that the UFC was not really willing to give Gamrot much of a title shot anyways, and the fact that, it's pretty much a given that Arman and Islam's going to be next anyways. So yeah, I put Izzy ahead of Gamrot, but if you wanted to put Gamrot as the number 1 stock dropper, totally fine with that too. I think there's a strong case for both. Okay, number 3 is got to be Steve Erceg. Erceg got caught. It's not like he got his ass kicked like the 3 rounds, and it's like, where did this come from? He got caught. It happens. It just sucks now, because optically now, right, he was undefeated in the UFC, and now he's lost back-to-back fights, and he got finished here. So his stock drops. The only saving grace for him is it's flyweight. Anything can happen. Like in his case as well, even getting a title shot. So, he could win a couple and be right back in the mix, but still, just the way he lost, him getting in the first round, that's definitely going to drop his stock big time. There's 2 others I got to mention. You could have maybe put this guy ahead of Steve Erceg if you wanted to, but Joshua Coulibaly, what the hell? That second round, he could have won this fight. And look, going in, he was a favorite too. He should have beat Ricardo Ramos. I don't think there's any question about it. That second round, he had an opportunity to finish Ramos, and he didn't. And his fight IQ is what cost him this fight. Now, do you think he won? I'm actually curious. I haven't even seen the media scorecards for this, because it was close. I think you could argue that Coulibaly did win. But at the same time, he really should have won, because he should have finished that fight. How did media score this one? See if I was far off. Okay, so yeah, majority felt Coulibaly won. I did think he won, but he only has himself to blame, because himself to blame. Because that second round, I think he should have taken care of business. And my last one is Stuart Nickel. Not that Nickel had a ton of stock going in here, but he was the only other fighter on this card who was a betting favorite and ended up losing his fight as well. So those are my stock risers and stock droppers. Again, going with my top 3: Dan Hooker, Dricus du Plessis, Kai Kara France as my stock risers, Israel Adesanya, Mateusz Gamrot, Steve Erceg as my stock droppers. I tell this to you guys every week. I want to hear your top 3 stock risers, top 3 stock droppers. You don't need to nitpick and say, I don't agree with you on this pick. You don't need to do that. Just tell me your 3 top ones and top stock droppers, and we're good. It's as simple as that, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. I'll be back here next week with another edition of the Stock Report as my end screen goes away, and we'll put it back on again. There we go.